Zane, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Brandon. Thanks for having me here. How you doing, man?
Yeah, fantastic. I'm excited for you to be here and get some awareness around what you guys are doing over there in Egypt. Some pretty cool stuff. So for anybody who doesn't know you, doesn't know, your company, could you explain a little bit about who you are, where this company came from?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're RESVA, RES-VA stands for Real Estate Solutions Virtual Assistants. We're a company that does lead generation, lead management, and marketing services for real estate investors out of Egypt. How we got started, man, it's a little bit of a story. So basically, I got into real estate back when I was in university through my second year. Started off as a cold caller, the same entry level service we offer, and then I've climbed up the ranks. I became a lead manager. I've met Sean Grable through becoming working as a lead manager for him. And 3 years in with him, we were creating systems and optimizing processes for leads. And that's when it hit me. These leads that we're working on, they're not the best. Not only that, the process that we're getting with them, it could be much, much better. That's when I approached Sean and was like, Sean, hey, I can get you much better leads than this. I can get you a better service than the one you're having right now. Sean was very skeptical to begin with, but he decided to, split test with me. He tested out three callers to start with, and 3 months in, caller to caller results were just there, and he could see the big difference. And we've switched everything over to me. We started growing naturally by his network, referrals, and it's been 2.5 years right now, Brandon. This year, 2024, we've started with around 74 employees and have grown up to 340 employees today without any paid marketing or anything like that, which we're going to start in 2025. So, been a hell of a ride with a lot of ups and downs and a lot of learning in the way.
Yeah, that's cool. So what would you say is the number one thing that those 300 something employees that you guys have are doing? Are they mostly cold calling? Are there other things that are pretty common too?
Yeah, so we do a bunch of different stuff. We have right around 270 people, the majority of our workforce doing cold calling. Then, with that amount of people, you need a big amount of management, which is right around 30 to 35 people. And then we have a few lead managers that work with client directly, help them manage the leads, set appointments, push the leads further for them. And then we've got texting as well, generating leads through texting.
Got it, got it. So it's all lead generation type services, and of course, you guys have your own org structure to make all that work. I'm sure that's that's got to be wild, scaling headcount that much in a single year. I'm sure
Yeah,
you guys run into your share of challenges.
it has been very challenging. Yeah, and we're all real estate focused as you've hit on. We are all lead generation. We've gotten a lot of people asking us to do a little bit of different stuff, go into other niches, but we are always sticking to the thing we know really well and trying to optimize and using all our resources up there. But yeah, it was a lot of challenge growing it up in a year with that head count.
Yeah. So when people are doing this kind of thing, right? So like texting, cold calling, whatever it seems like what I seem to be hearing the most is Filipino cold callers. We hear a ton about that. I'm curious what your perspective would be because you probably have a better idea on this than I do. Seems like Filipinos really common, and then sometimes people are looking for like expat Americans and stuff like that. Egyptian is not something I've heard a lot of outside the context of just your company. It seems like I if I had to guess, I'd say a lot of the United States real estate focused Egyptian people probably work for your company.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, like the cultural differences, why Egypt? I mean, obviously, for you, I understand why Egypt, but like for somebody else that's looking at like I could be hiring this kind of talent from various different countries. Like, what are some of the pros of hiring from Egypt?
Yeah, absolutely. So Brandon, Filipinos is the people who started it. It all started in the Philippines. Egypt came a little bit late within this industry. Why I feel Egyptians are amazing, especially for things that have sales within, is Egyptians are used to be pushy. Egyptians don't take no for an answer. Everything in Egypt is negotiable, starting from a gallon of gas down to a loaf of bread. If you have anyone traveling to Egypt, we negotiate every little thing We don't like taking no for an answer. And I find that person or that culture being here works really well with sales more. Whereas Filipinos by nature, and if anyone's dealt with a lot of Filipinos, he'll notice with nature, they're people pleasers that tend to really excel in customer service roles more than sales roles because they naturally want the person in front of them to be comfortable, to be happy, to be, not push them, not negotiate with them, and so on. And that's, I feel, the biggest difference between Egyptians and Filipinos, and why I think Egyptians really excel in sales roles and this job in particular. Not only that as well, but in Egypt, it's a big cultural thing here to continue your education up to university. So almost all of our workforce have universities degrees in engineering, medicine, accounting, finance. We even have people with masters, and they end up choosing working in this line of work because it is better compensation than they're working in their own field. So not only you get the nature people who can be salesy and can take on sales for you, but you also get someone who's educated, super smart, and has an education.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting, a good mix. What about like English skills and accent? How does that compare to other places? And like
As
you speak fantastic English. Like, where does that come from? Is it normal to learn that in school? That kind of thing.
Yeah, one thing about Egypt is people here don't have a really heavy accent. Most of the people you'll notice have light accent. Egypt culturally is close to the US, or I wouldn't say close, let's say it's heavily affected by the US, where Egyptian people will follow a lot of, US celebrities, will love Hollywood, love US series. So where my language came from is actually from watching a lot of series, especially Friends. I've been watching that nonstop and video game when I was really young. And it's similar to a lot of the other Egyptian people, just watching all the movies for Hollywood, interacting on social media, following up stories. So you don't get really heavy accents with Egyptians.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, good for you, man. So how did it work? So at the beginning, you worked for Sean, right?
Yep.
And the whole thing was like, let's get this company some deals in Columbus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So how did you go from that to let's provide this as a service?
It has been growing naturally. So Sean started out by reaching out to his connections and network and telling people, "Hey, I found this amazing service that has been working out for me. If you guys want to try it." And we started growing naturally. The big challenges that we faced in the beginning was not on bringing on people because Sean has a lot of people within his network. It was within operations a little bit more and scaling the team in the Egyptian side. I've worked at a couple of call centers here, Brandon, and how I chose to combat that is call centers here usually are a very high stress environment. They treat people more of as numbers. They treat people as if you don't get your target, you're out. You have to get 2 leads a day. You have to do this. And people were not looking forward to working in a call center, not looking forward to grow processes and systems and grow in that field in there. And I've combated that with early on just pushing hard towards culture through core values. We have accountability, respect, and continuous development. And the thing I always hit on very early on is respect is not just to respect people that you're dealing with. Respect yourself, respect your job, respect your role. How we do that with callers is callers usually in other companies will only know that they need to generate a lead and not understand anything afterward. But when people join us, we make them understand the entire process. Hey, when you get a lead, it goes to a lead manager afterwards, and then to an acquisition, and then to a disposition, and then to, TC handles it. So everyone who's working that lead after you is only being able to do that because of you. So you have an important job. You got to respect that, put all your efforts in. And we found it had amazing results, and our team started growing. People actually wanted to join us more and more and more. And up until today, we have people on our waiting lists saying, "Hey, we'll not go for any other job offer because we love the work environment and healthy environment that you guys have and want to come work for you." We do that as well through continuously developing people. Another thing that's unfortunate about call centers that have been really heavy on changing that ideology about call centers in Egypt is people over here think it's just a stepping stone. You know, I'm studying or I've graduated, I can't find a job. I'll just join a call center, make some easy money since it pays good, and then get out of it. We've tried to combat that with ensuring they're continuously developing, starting from the cold callers because they're the majority of our headcount. We have people have a quality call index that is tracked, and every other week you get a target. You need to improve that by 10%, by 15%. So from the lowest level of cold caller, they feel they're learning something new every week, they're developing, and then managers will get development targets as well that's measured. We have a lot of people right now in our big management team that joined this field saying like, hey, I'm just in for making some money. And when they saw how, you know, we do things here, how we develop them, how respect and accountability is held here, they're in it now for the long term as a career.
Very cool. Yeah, good for you that you figured out how to build that culture. I'm curious, how has that changed over time? Like, look at you right now and compare that to you 1 year ago. What's a lesson that you've learned that's helped the culture of the company grow that you didn't understand before?
I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned a year from today is not letting people who hurt culture continue working, even if their performance is insanely amazing. We've had a couple of people who had insane performance. They were always pushing amazing ideas, pushing them through to implementation, getting projects up on the ground, and they were phenomenal at their job, but they were hurting the culture. People weren't happy with their attitude. And of you know, last year I would have let that person stay in for a couple of months trying to fix that culture issue. Today I would cut that person right off without thinking about it twice because culture is worth much, much more than performance and work.
Interesting. What's the best way you found to let that happen across the organization? Because what's kind of hard about culture is that it's a little bit fluffy, right? So where I've struggled as a business owner, and where I know people on my team have struggled, where they are choosing to continue to employ somebody on their team or not, is you don't want to cut somebody out of the company based on what you feel, because it doesn't seem fair to them, right? But culture is a little bit hard to objectively measure and understand how somebody's impacting it. So I'm curious how you approach that.
Yeah, absolutely. I always go back to our core values: accountability, respect, and continuous development. And I always, whenever someone does something, I tell them like, hey, this broke the core value of respect. Even if you're correct on that, even if you have that right, you didn't follow that core value. Accountability, you've done that mistake. You weren't accountable. You didn't do that. The way of spreading it is to ensure that all leadership people have a great understanding of it. It's always pushed through our cultural meetings quarterly, through our leadership meetings. And then one thing I do with leadership as well is every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, I'll go to our leadership people, and in our one-on-ones, I'll tell them, hey, tell me two situations that you used accountability or respect or continuous development throughout the last 3 weeks. And they recap that to me and tell me what happened and how they've used it and how they've encouraged people to use it. When you just continue doing that and keep doing it, it gets drilled in everyone's mind, and everyone, it's like a playbook for everyone. And whenever a problem arises up, it's the first thing they think about and want to implement.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. I'd imagine there's at least a few people listening to this that are managing their own cold callers, and maybe they consider working with you guys. I'm curious, obviously, when it comes to managing cold callers, you're doing that on a higher level than most people listening to this are in their own organization, right? Because nobody has a need for 300 cold callers. So that's
Yeah.
kind of your incredible skill that you bring to this. So for somebody who is watching this and maybe they have their own cold calling team, maybe they've got one or two or 10 cold callers, what advice would you have for them to get the most out of their team?
Absolutely. So whenever people ask me that or tell me what's the first most important things to focus about, I tell them it all goes down into three factors to ensure you're having a success out of not just managing the cold caller, but the entire campaign. First one is data. You have to be on top of your data, and I can dive into that a little bit deeper as well. Second thing is the caller and dialer optimization. And then the third thing is your sales process. If any piece out of these is missing, you'll be falling into, you'll not be achieving the results you're hoping to achieve. Data, there's a lot of things that can be done within it. Within data, I'll tell you a quick brief about what we do, and people can kind of do a little bit similar to it and understand how they can help things happen within there. So with data, whenever we get lists, the first thing we do is we don't just upload lists as bulks into the dialer. We split them into small chunks of 3,000 pieces each. Why we do that is because if anything happened with the campaign, productivity dropped, something went wrong, we're able to analyze small chunks and see if the problem is with a certain chunk or overall list. And if it's with just one chunk, we're able to deprioritize that chunk or deactivate it and so on. How we do that is if you're using a dialer, you could use the reporting from it to do it. But our engineering team has built our own software tool that will have all the KPIs from the numbers, from calls answered, machines, calls to connects, average calls per agent, abandoned percentage. Not only that, tracking dispositions as well, seeing how many percentage each disposition has happened throughout the list, and tracking lead generation according to list, which list generated what leads. Once you combine all that data, you can analyze it and decide, okay, is it a data management issue? Should I adjust weighting? Should I adjust strategy in targeting people? Should I call a different chunk of the list right now because that has generated more leads and has the best stats, and so on? That would be the first piece, and that's on a quick, brief, high level. We could go much deeper. Other than that, we do a little bit of scrubbing to these lists as well. So whenever, we've called people on the wrong phone numbers, we're able to remove them from the list and get rid of them and just act based on that. Second part is the dialer and the caller itself. I'll start with the caller. One tip that I've found very interesting and we implement within our training and coaching here is whenever you get a VA or a cold caller that you're training, you have to realize that this person is from a different part of the world. They have different culture than you guys. We even simple culture thing explaining helps really in a call and can change a call from, not so good to good. Understanding that, football over there is different than football over here. If someone brings up football, it's a completely different story. You guys use different metrics. If someone says inches, yards, so the caller doesn't freeze. Having them just familiar with basic cultural difference will not make them freeze on these calls and able to continue a call. Other than that, on the dialer, there is a bunch of stuff that you should do. There always should be live monitoring happening on the dialer. A quick metric, so I don't bore people, is calls per agent and abandon rate. So basically, calls per agent is how many lines are the dialer running. Is it 2 lines? Is it 3 lines? And you can adjust that on the dialer. Abandoned rate is when a call drops because there's no any caller available to pick it. So for instance, if you have a 3-line dialer, one caller, one person picks up, he gets connected to the caller. The second person, when they pick up, the call is just going to be abandoned. You should be always live monitoring that abandoned percentage and making sure it doesn't go over 3%. And if it goes above 3% at any point, you need to slow down the dialer and have calls per agent going less. So you don't burn out the list, and at the same time, the caller is not just sitting in there for a really long time waiting for someone to connect with them. That's one thing that we've noticed people don't pay attention to too much. And the third part on the dialer is the phone numbers that there are people calling out off. You should always make sure you're changing that and checking through, a third party if they're flagged as spam or not, and just ensuring they're being changed. We always recommend having at least 30 phone numbers for each caller and checking bi-weekly if they're being flagged as spam or not, and seeing if you need to change those and play around with those. Other than that, non-technical details for management. When you're managing someone from across the globe, communication should be top notch. You have to make them part of the team. We always recommend doing at least daily huddles. It doesn't have to be a long meeting where we're going through everything, but just a quick touchdown on the beginning of the day. How's everything going? What's your goal for today? Did you face any challenges today? What are you hoping to achieve today so they can feel part of the team? And then include them in the meetings that you do within your company as well with other staff for goal setting, how sharing their wins, sharing their challenges, shouting, giving them a shout out in front of everyone. So they start to establish these relationships with other people in your team and start connecting and talking with them. This helps immensely with morale. And Brandon, I've got to tell you, morale in our job is very important because cold calling is hard.
Oh, I believe you. It's we're hiring an SDR right now as a company, or we're at least looking into it. And I was talking to our in-house recruiter, and I was like, "Yeah, this is a really hard one." He's like, "Why?" Because it's the worst job in the world. It's not like ultimately because obviously like the parts of the job that there's a lot to a job more than just the work you're doing. It's the company you're working with, the people you're working for, the culture, and finding a way to be happy in all those different ways. But like
$100%.
I do think that kind of work has a tendency to burn people out.
Yeah,
And
100%.
it's a hard game. Do you know how long people stay with you on average?
Yeah, so actually our turnover rate is very low. And typically in our industry we've seen turnover rates go up to 100% and even more. Up in 2024, our turnover rate is 24%, which for our industry is phenomenal. And I feel we've managed to achieve that just because of the culture and everything we've been putting to developing people as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Good for you
Yeah.
guys. Well, thank you for taking all this time and sharing all your wisdom, Zane. I've enjoyed this conversation. For people who are interested in talking to you or maybe learning about what you guys do, where should they go?
Yeah, I think they should go to resva.com, res-va.com, and just hit the contact us button in there. They'll be able to schedule a meeting in there. We'll be very happy not only to have people use our services, but as well if they need any help with their in-house cold calling, if they need any help with managing a virtual VA, we're an open book and we love sharing anything we can.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Zane, for your time. And for everybody else listening, I'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brad.